For thousands of years, no other book in the world has changed the world like the Bible. The Bible is a collection of histories, prophecies, and teachings that has been read, quoted, and translated into different languages to spread throughout the world. And while many believe that it is the complete Word of God, there are also many who question whether the events written in it are really true. Is there any evidence that proves the stories in the Bible are not just made up? In fact, there is. Yes, over time, science and archaeology themselves have started to provide evidence. From the ruins found beneath the sand to the ancient tablets with carvings of names and places that have long been written in the Bible. Also in laboratories and in excavations in Israel, Egypt, Iraq, and other countries. In the Middle East, scientists and archaeologists have discovered things that were once considered mere legends, like the pool of Siloam where Jesus healed the blind man, and even inscriptions that prove the existence of Pontius Pilate, the governor who sentenced him to the cross. In this video, we will discuss 10 amazing facts written in the Bible that have been proven true by science itself. And let's add 2 bonus discoveries that experts continue to debate to this day. But before we start, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. This is a big help for us content creators. Thank you very much, and now let's get started. The Pool of Siloam, one of the most famous miracles of Jesus, is the healing of the man born blind as written in the Gospel of John, chapter 9. According to the story, Jesus spat on the ground, mixed his saliva with dust to make mud, and put it on the blind man's eyes. And he told him, "Wash your eyes in the pool of Siloam." For many centuries, scholars debated whether the pool of Siloam was a real place or just a symbol of faith. But everything changed in 2005 when workers digging for a sewer line, Jerusalem. While they were digging, they discovered ancient stone steps. Archaeologists were immediately called, and when the excavation began, a surprising discovery emerged. A vast water storage with a design that matches the details described by John in the Gospel. They discovered that the place was indeed the Pool of Siloam, and it was built during the time of the Second Temple. That was more than 2,000 years ago, exactly at the southern end. The mention in the Bible at the end of the path leading to the Temple of Jerusalem. Its structure matches the hydraulic architecture of that time. This means a water channel design used in sacred baths during the time of the Jews. Because of this, archaeologists have proven that the Pool of Siloam is not just a symbol, but a real place where the miracle of Jesus may have actually happened. This strengthened the historical record of the Gospel of John, which is not just a spiritual writing, but a true record of events that happened in Jerusalem 2,000 years ago. The Roman governor who condemned Jesus. Pontius Pilate is known as the Roman governor of Judea, and he himself ordered the crucifixion of Jesus according to the Gospels. But for a long time, scholars doubted his actual existence. They said there was not enough historical evidence to prove his existence except for what was written in the Bible. This only changed in 1961 when a group of archaeologists led by Dr. Antonio Frova discovered a stone with a Latin inscription among the ruins of Caesarea Maritima, an ancient city on the Mediterranean coast of Israel. That stone was a limestone slab measuring about 2.7 feet in width. And inscribed on it in Latin were the words, "Pontius Pilatus, prefect of Judea, dedicated this temple to the people of Caesarea in honor of Emperor Tiberius." According to experts, Emperor Tiberius Caesar ruled from the year 14 to the year 37 AD. This is exactly the period when Jesus was crucified according to the Gospel record. This discovery is proof that Pontius Pilate really existed, and he was indeed the official representative of Roman authority in Judea. Today, the original stone can be seen at the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, and it is considered as one of the few physical pieces of evidence that prove the existence of the characters in the New Testament. Again, the science and the history of faith affirm that the people written in the Bible are not just characters in a story, but real parts of the history of the world. The city of Zion is often mentioned in the first book of Samuel and the first book of Kings as a historic place called the City of the Spring, a city conquered by King David. And it was also here where his son Solomon was anointed as king. For more than 20 years, archaeologists from the Israel Antiquities Authority have been excavating until they finally found the actual location of this city inside the City of David National Park in the old part of Jerusalem. The discovered city is more than 3,800 years old, dating back to the time of the Canaanites, an ancient civilization in that region. It was built around the Gihon Spring, an important water spring that served as the main source of drinking water for the entire city. The spring was surrounded by fortification walls and stone passageways, proof that the engineering and military architecture of that time was very advanced. According to the Bible, beside the Gihon Spring, King David ordered the priest Zadok to anoint Solomon with oil as the new king of Israel. So it's not just a structure, but also a sacred and historic place of coronation. The City of the Spring is now considered the largest Canaanite fortress discovered in history and the most extensive defensive structure before the time of Herod the Great. This discovery is strong evidence that the stories in the Old Testament have a real origin, not just fiction. This is proof that the kingdoms of David and Solomon were not only spiritual in the pages of the Bible, but were truly powerful and prosperous civilizations in the history of mankind. The crossing of the Red Sea. This is one of the most iconic miracles in the entire Bible, the parting of the Red Sea or Red Sea crossing that can be read in the book of Exodus. According to the scriptures, Moses led the people, but as they were traveling, they were caught by Pharaoh's army and became confused because a vast sea was blocking their way. And there, one of the greatest miracles in history happened. When Moses stretched out his staff, the waters parted and dry land appeared. The Israelites were able to cross, but when the Egyptian soldiers followed, the waters returned and the waves swallowed them. For many centuries, this story was considered purely a spiritual miracle, but according to some scientists, there may be a natural explanation behind it. Carl Drews, an expert in atmospheric computational modeling, the study of wind and climate movement through computer simulation, conducted an experiment using the topography and wind data of the Nile Delta, particularly in the Lake of Tanis, a region in eastern Egypt. According to his simulation, if there is a strong wind reaching 59 miles per hour, or about 95 kilometers per hour lasting for several hours, the water could recede and temporarily open a land bridge or a dry path. This phenomenon is called the wind set down effect, a natural occurrence where strong winds draw water away from a part of a lake or sea. His study showed that this could have happened during the time of Moses and later on. That natural event was recorded as a miracle of God. This was also confirmed in a BBC report that compared that scene to a tsunami on Mindoro Island, Philippines, in the year 1994. According to witnesses, before the giant wave arrived, the sea suddenly receded and the bottom of the lake appeared, a scene almost identical to what is described in the Bible. The reason for that was an undersea earthquake that opened a crack and sucked in the water. It came back as a giant wave. These kinds of observations show that although the story in the Bible has a deep spiritual meaning, God himself may have used the forces of nature to demonstrate his power. This is proof that science and faith are not in conflict, but can come together for a single purpose, to reveal the truth. The Babylonian captivity, one of the most important periods in the history of the Israelites, is what is called the Babylonian captivity. The exile of the Jews to Babylon happened after their enemies destroyed Jerusalem and the first temple in the year 586 BC. This is mentioned in many parts of the Bible, in the 2 books of Kings, Jeremiah, Lamentations, and Daniel. But for a long time, some scholars thought that this was just exaggerated in religious accounts, until the discovery of the Babylonian captivity, clay tablets with cuneiform inscriptions. These tablets contain the official record of prisoners and foreign residents in Babylon. One of the most famous among these is the so-called Jehoiakim tablet, discovered in the year 1899. Written here are the food rations and benefits given to King Jehoiakim of Judah, also called Jehoiakim in the Bible, and to his family after they were taken captive. This matches the account. It was written in the book of 2 Kings, chapter 25, verses 27 to 30, where it is said that King Evil-Merodach of Babylon released Jehoiakim and treated him with honor. These records prove that the authors of the Bible were not just recounting legends, but were truly documenting the political and social events of that time. Because of these discoveries, historians now recognize that the Babylonian captivity is one of the most clearly documented events in ancient history, supported by both archaeology and historical records. This is proof that sometimes faith and science are two reflections of the same truth, that the stories of the Bible, although sacred, are also a true part of our history as humans. From the Old Testament, we now move to the most dramatic and historic part of the New Testament, the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. We already know the story of Jesus' judgment, but only a few are aware of a mysterious detail about the very cross on which he was crucified. According to historical records and Roman customs, every cross used in executions was specially made for each prisoner. The height, width, and measurements of the cross were matched to the body of the person to be crucified. This made the death more personal and more painful. But according to historians, the cross used for Jesus was not actually made for him. During the time of the trial, there was another prisoner in the cell, Barabbas, a notorious killer and rebel who was sentenced to death by crucifixion. According to the Gospels, Pilate let the people choose who would be released, Jesus or Barabbas. And under the pressure and influence of the leaders of the people, the crowd chose to release the killer. So the cross that was prepared for Barabbas was the one used for the crucifixion of the innocent Lamb of God. There are old Christian traditions that say when the Roman soldiers crucified Jesus, they had difficulty reaching his left hand because the cross was larger than the size of his body. They even had to pull Jesus' arm until it was almost dislocated. And that's when they realized even more that the cross was literally not meant for him. But here we also see the deepest message of the gospel. Barabbas' cross is the cross of humanity. Barabbas' name comes from the Aramaic language, Bar Abba, which means son of the Father. In a spiritual sense, we too are sons of the Father. So the cross of Barabbas symbolizes the cross meant for you and for me. But because of his boundless love, Jesus took our place, carried the cross that should have been ours, endured the pain meant for us, so that we may have hope of entering eternal life. Even in the smallest details of his suffering, we can see the signature of God's love. Nothing that happened on that cross was an accident. Everything was part of the plan of salvation. And as Jesus said in Matthew 16:24, "If anyone desires to follow me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me." The mysterious cloth of Christ. This is one of the most controversial yet spine-chilling relics in the history of Christianity, the Shroud of Turin. This is the cloth that is said to have been used to wrap the body of Jesus after he was crucified. On the cloth is a faint image of a man with wounds on his head, hands, and side, similar to the wounds that Christ received on the cross. Since the 14th century, the cloth has been kept in Turin, Italy. In 1978, scientists examined it using carbon dating, and it was found to date from between the years 1260 and 1390. Many said it was fake, But in the following years, new tests using infrared imaging and pollen analysis showed traces of plants and dust from the region of Jerusalem. There were also traces of AB blood group found, and the image was not made with paint but seemed to be burned onto the fabric fibers by an intense light. No scientist can explain exactly how the image was formed. So for many, the Shroud of Turin is a mystery that connects science and faith. As one researcher said, every fiber of this cloth is like a fingerprint of a miracle. The Dead Sea Scrolls, the Bible preserved in time. In the year 1947, a young Bedouin shepherd in Israel searched for a lost goat in the caves of Qumran near the Dead Sea. While he was throwing a stone inside the cave, he heard the sound of a breaking jar, and there he found the ancient scrolls that would change the history of the Bible. These were called the Dead Sea Scrolls. Over 900 fragments of manuscripts containing parts of the Old Testament, including the books of Isaiah, Psalms, and Deuteronomy. According to experts' analysis, these were written more than 2,000 years ago, between 300 BC and 100 AD. When scientists examined them, they found that the contents of the scrolls were almost exactly the same as the modern versions of the Bible that we use today. The differences are very minor, just variations in spelling and letters. This means that despite the passing of 2,000 years, God has preserved His Word with almost no changes. The Dead Sea Scrolls are proof that the Bible is not a fabrication or something that has been altered over time, but has truly been preserved letter for letter. As a professor from Hebrew University said, if there is a document that can prove the authenticity of the Scriptures, this is it. The Dead Sea Scrolls are the echo of God's ancient voice. The fall of Jericho. Another amazing story in the Old Testament is the collapse of the walls of Jericho, which can be read in the book of Joshua chapter 6. After crossing the Jordan River, the Israelites faced their first major obstacle before reaching the Promised Land, the heavily fortified city of Jericho. But God gave Joshua an unusual command. For 7 days, they were to march around the city in silence while the priests blew the ram's horns or shofar. On the 7th day, during the final round, they all shouted together, and according to the Bible, the walls of Jericho collapsed. In the 20th century, archaeologists like Ernst Sellen, Karl Watzinger, and later Kathleen Kenyon began excavating ancient Jericho. They found the remains of one of the oldest walled cities in the world, estimated to date back 8,000 years before Christ was born. Although Kenyon initially doubted if this was connected to the story of Joshua, she found layers of ruins that seemed to be the result of a sudden collapse of the wall. It didn't collapse gradually, but rather as if a powerful force exploded outward. In the 1990s, the archaeologist Dr. Bryant Wood re-examined the evidence. It turned out that the destruction of Jericho happened at exactly the time specified in the Bible. Around the year 1400 BC, among the findings were jars still full of grain, a sign that the siege did not last long. This means that the city was captured suddenly. Exactly as stated in the scriptures, it was conquered during harvest time, and there was no time to destroy or steal. Because of this, the discoveries confirm that the story of Jericho is not a myth, but a historical event proven by archaeology itself. The Tower of Babel. This is one of the most controversial stories in the Old Testament, the Tower of Babel, which can be read in the book of Genesis chapter 11. According to the Bible, after the great flood during the time of Noah, people began to multiply again throughout the earth. But because of their pride and desire to succeed without God, they decided to build a tower that would reach up to heaven. Their goal was to show off and make a name for themselves. When God saw this, He saw the excessive pride of man, so He confused their language. This caused them to no longer understand each other and to scatter to different parts of the world. Since then, it is said that this is where the diversity of languages began. For many centuries, some believed that the Tower of Babel was just a legend, a symbol of human pride. But an ancient stone tablet discovered more than 100 years ago in Old Babylon, which is now part of Iraq, once again shed light on these stories. That tablet has cuneiform inscriptions, the ancient script of Mesopotamia, and a picture of a tower that looks like a pyramid with stairs. According to Professor Andrew George from the University of London, the tower on the tablet is called a ziggurat, a type of step temple usually built in Mesopotamia as a shrine for their gods. The tower shown has 7 floors, and according to George's analysis, this could be the possible real inspiration for the Tower of Babel. The man depicted next to the tower, holding a spear and wearing a conical hat, was identified by him as King Nebuchadnezzar II, a well-known ruler of Babylon, who built many monumental structures in the city, including the restoration of ancient ziggurats. The tablet contains details about the process of building the tower, and it's surprising because its purpose and design match the description in Genesis, although it was written from the perspective of the Mesopotamians. Because of this, the debate was reopened, suggesting that the Tower of Babel might not just be a legend, but a real structure from ancient history. Over time, the Hebrews interpreted this as a symbol of God's power and human weakness, a reminder that no matter how high humanity can reach, there are limits set by the Creator. The Wall of King Solomon. According to the first book of Kings in the Old Testament, King Solomon, the son of King David, ordered the construction of a strong wall around Jerusalem as part of the expansion and strengthening of the Holy City. For many years, some modern archaeologists have doubted this story. They say it might just be a fabrication or an exaggerated version by later authors. But in 2010, a group of archaeologists from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, led by Eilat Mazar, made a historic discovery while excavating in a place called the Ophel area, part of the ancient city between the city of David and the Temple Mount. They found the remains of a massive wall. According to analysis, the stones used here date back to the 10th century before Christ, exactly during the reign of Solomon. The wall is approximately 230 feet long and 20 feet high. It also includes a guardhouse and a tower. This proves that it was part of a systematic defense of the city against invaders. This discovery proved that the Bible's description of Solomon's reign was true. It also showed that Jerusalem was already a large and prosperous city at that time, contrary to previous theories that it was small and insignificant. For Bible scholars, Solomon's Wall serves as a physical connection to the stories of the Old Testament, proof that there is real history behind the stories of faith. The physics of Noah's Ark. One of the most well-known stories in the Bible is about Noah's Ark, the gigantic ship that Noah built after God commanded him to prepare for a great flood that would wipe out the entire world. In 2014, 4 physics students from the University of Lancaster in England conducted a unique experiment. Their goal was to find out if it was possible for Noah's Ark to float and carry thousands of animals according to the laws of modern physics. They used as their basis what was written in the book of Genesis, where it was detailed how God instructed Noah to build the ark. According to the Bible, they used a measurement called a cubit, an ancient unit of length equal to the distance from the elbow to the tip of the middle finger, approximately 19 inches. The students used that measurement to determine the modern size of the ark. Their calculations showed that the ship was 476 feet long, 79 feet wide, and 46 feet high, almost the same size as a medium-sized cargo ship today. But they didn't just study the measurements. According to the Bible, the ark was made of gopher wood, an ancient type of wood that can no longer be identified in modern times. So as a substitute, the group used cypress wood because it was the type of wood commonly used for shipbuilding back then and has almost the same characteristics. After organizing the data, they started calculating the weight of the ship. It turned out that even when empty, it would reach 2.6 million pounds, or equivalent to the weight of almost 100 trucks of sand. But according to Archimedes' principle, a law in physics that explains how objects float in water, it can actually carry up to 112 million pounds before it completely sinks. In other words, Noah's Ark could easily carry the weight of all the animals on land, as well as the food in Noah's family, just as written in the Bible. The study did not say whether the story of the flood really happened or not, but it clearly shows that such a design is very possible according to physics. It's an amazing example of how faith and science intersect, two worlds we often consider to be different. As one of the researchers said, we're not proving the miracle, we're just showing that it's possible for it to happen. And in that context, it's a beautiful reminder that some mysteries of faith actually have logic behind them.